Did you know the average American's net worth changes a lot depending on their age? And there's a pretty good chance you're either doing much better or much worse than you think. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the average net worth for every age group in America, from your 20s all the way to retirement, so you can see exactly where you stand. Now, if you've made a few financial mistakes or you feel like you're getting a late start, don't worry. I'll also explain why these numbers don't tell the full story, what they actually mean, and, more importantly, what you can do if you're behind. Some of these statistics honestly surprised me, and by the end of this video, you'll have a much clearer idea of how your finances compare to other people your age. Hey, I'm Michael, and for a long time, I genuinely thought I was doing pretty well financially. I was saving a little, paying my bills on time, and figured I was on the right track. But once I actually compared my net worth to where other Americans were at my age, I realized I wasn't nearly as far along as I thought I was. That was a bit of a wake-up call. It pushed me to stop just hoping everything would work out and actually learn how people build wealth over time. Fast forward to today, and I'm in a completely different financial position. That's exactly why I started this channel, to help people avoid the same mistakes I made and make smarter money decisions, no matter where they're starting from. Now, before we start comparing numbers, there's one thing we need to clear up because it's something that confuses a lot of people. When most people hear the term net worth, they assume it just means how much money you have sitting in your bank account. It doesn't. Your net worth is simply the value of everything you own minus everything you owe. So if you own a home, have money invested, or have cash sitting in the bank, those all count as assets. On the flip side, if you have a mortgage, a car loan, student loans, or credit card debt, those all count against your net worth. That's why someone earning $200,000 a year could actually have a lower net worth than someone making half that amount if they're carrying a lot of debt. And that's exactly why your income by itself doesn't tell the whole story. Now here's where things get really interesting. When people look up the average net worth by age, they're often looking at the wrong number. There are actually two numbers you need to pay attention to: the average and the median. The average is calculated by adding up everyone's wealth and dividing it by the total number of people. Sounds fair enough. Until you remember that billionaires are included in those numbers. Think about it like this. Imagine there are 5 people in a room and each one has $100,000. Now a billionaire walks in. Suddenly, the average wealth in that room shoots through the roof, even though absolutely nothing changed for the original 5 people. That's basically what happens with national wealth statistics. The median works differently. It's simply the person right in the middle. Half the population has more and half has less. For most people, that's actually a much better way to understand where the typical American stands financially. So throughout this video, I'll show you both numbers. And trust me, once you see the difference between them, some of these age groups are going to make a whole lot more sense. Let's start with Americans under 35. If you're under 35, this is probably the point in the video where you're either thinking, I'm doing okay, or, I already know I'm behind. The truth is, this is the stage where almost everyone feels like they're playing catch-up. You're just getting your career off the ground. Your salary probably isn't where you'd like it to be yet, and there's a good chance you're juggling student loans, a car payment, or trying to save up for your first home. Then you open social media, and it looks like everyone your age is driving luxury cars, traveling the world, and somehow becoming millionaires before they turn 30. But here's the thing. That's not reality. Most people under 35 are still laying the financial foundation they'll build on for the rest of their lives. This is the stage where you're building habits, growing your income, and slowly accumulating assets. It might not feel like much is happening, but these early years matter more than most people realize. That's why it's completely normal for your net worth to be relatively low at this age. In fact, plenty of young adults actually have a negative net worth because they owe more than they own. Now, I know hearing negative net worth sounds scary, but it doesn't automatically mean you're in financial trouble. For a lot of people, it simply reflects the fact that they've invested in an education, bought their first home, or are just getting established financially. So what separates the people who eventually build real wealth from the people who never seem to get ahead? Well, it's usually not because they landed a 6-figure job straight out of college. It's not because they picked the perfect stock. And it's definitely not because they got lucky overnight. More often than not, the difference is actually pretty boring. They started building assets early, and they stayed consistent. Even investing a relatively small amount every month can grow into hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars over time because compound growth has years, sometimes decades, to do the heavy lifting. So if you're under 35 and your net worth doesn't look impressive today, don't obsess over the number. Instead, ask yourself one simple question: am I moving in the right direction? Because where you are today matters a whole lot less than the habits you're building over the next 10 years. And speaking of that, let's move into your 30s and early 40s. For a lot of Americans, this is where life starts getting expensive. Sure, you're probably earning more than you were in your 20s, but your responsibilities have grown right along with your paycheck. Maybe you bought a house, started a family, have kids to support, or you're trying to save for retirement while also helping your parents as they get older. For a lot of people, this is the decade where it feels like money disappears almost as fast as it comes in. And that's exactly what makes this age group so interesting. Some people finally start building serious wealth. Others are earning more money than ever before, but somehow still feel like they're living paycheck to paycheck. So why does that happen? Because income and wealth are two completely different things. One person gets a raise and immediately upgrades their lifestyle. A nicer car, a bigger house, more expensive vacations, more subscriptions, higher monthly payments. Someone else gets that exact same raise, but instead of increasing their spending, they quietly increase their investments. Fast forward 5 or 10 years, and those two people can end up with dramatically different net worths, even if they earned almost identical salaries the entire time. This is what people mean when they talk about lifestyle inflation, and honestly, it's one of the biggest reasons so many high-income households still struggle financially. The tricky part is that lifestyle inflation doesn't happen all at once. It's one subscription here, a slightly nicer car there, a bigger mortgage, a few more dinners out, an online purchase that doesn't seem like a big deal. On their own, none of those decisions feel significant. But over time, they stack up. And before you know it, every dollar of your paycheck already has a job before it even hits your bank account. That's why your 30s and early 40s are such a critical window for building wealth. The financial habits you develop during these years can make the difference between watching your investments really start to snowball or spending the next 20 years trying to catch up. Now let's see what happens as retirement starts getting a little closer. Now let's look at what happens as retirement starts coming into view. By the time you reach your late 50s and 60s, this is usually when your net worth is at, or at least close to, its highest point. After decades of working, saving, and investing, this is where all of those years of consistency should start paying off. Your retirement accounts have had plenty of time to grow. Your mortgage might be mostly paid off. And if you've been investing consistently, there's a good chance your portfolio has built enough momentum that it's generating meaningful growth on its own. In fact, there comes a point where your investments can earn more in a year than you're actually contributing. And honestly, that's one of the coolest things about long-term investing. Eventually, your money starts doing more of the work than you do. But here's something that catches a lot of people off guard. Even at this stage of life, plenty of Americans still don't feel financially ready for retirement. Some people didn't start investing until later in life. Others had to deal with layoffs, recessions, medical bills, divorce, or unexpected family responsibilities. Life has a funny way of throwing curveballs at you. Very few people have a perfectly smooth financial journey, which is why comparing yourself to someone else can be so misleading. You have no idea what they've been through, and they have no idea what you've been through. That's also why it's so important to understand the difference between the average and the median. The average gets pulled way up by a relatively small number of extremely wealthy households. The median, on the other hand, gives you a much better idea of what the typical American approaching retirement actually has. So if your number isn't anywhere near the average, don't immediately assume you've done something wrong. A much better question to ask yourself is this: am I in a better position today than I was 5 years ago? Because that's something you can actually control. So let's wrap things up with 3 practical moves that can help improve your financial future, no matter where you're starting from, whether today's numbers made you feel confident or a little uncomfortable. There's one thing I want you to remember: your financial future isn't determined by the number you have today. It's determined by the choices you make from this point forward. Whether you're 25, 45, or even 65, the people who build wealth tend to have a few habits in common. The first one is simple: know where your money is actually going. Now, I know that sounds obvious, but if I ask most people exactly how much they spent on takeout, subscriptions, impulse purchases, or random online shopping last month, most couldn't tell you. People often think they have an income problem, when in reality, they have an awareness problem. Small expenses don't feel like much in the moment, but over the course of a year, they can quietly add up to hundreds or even thousands of dollars that could have been invested instead. So before you focus on earning more, make sure you're doing a good job of keeping more of what you already earn. Because sometimes the fastest way to build wealth isn't making another dollar. It's simply wasting fewer of the dollars you already have. The second move is this: build your assets before you upgrade your lifestyle. This is where a lot of people get stuck. They get a raise, and almost immediately, their lifestyle gets more expensive too. A nicer apartment, a newer car, more dinners out, better vacations. Before long, that raise has disappeared. Instead, try flipping the order. The next time your income goes up, increase your investments first. Treat that like the non-negotiable. Then if your budget still has room, go ahead and enjoy some of the extra money. That one habit can completely change where you end up financially because your assets start growing right alongside your income instead of your expenses eating up every extra dollar you make. And finally, invest consistently, even if you feel like you can't invest very much. One of the biggest myths about building wealth is that you need thousands of dollars to get started. You really don't. Consistency matters far more than perfection. Someone who invests $100 every month for years is usually in a much stronger position than someone who keeps waiting for the perfect time to start. Because here's the reality: you can always invest more money later. You can never buy back time, and time is what gives compound growth its power. That's why the best time to start investing was years ago. The second best time is today. The sooner you start, the more time your money has to grow. And that's exactly how ordinary people quietly build extraordinary wealth over the long run. Pay off. So, are you behind? Honestly, maybe, but after seeing all these numbers, I actually hope that's not the question you're asking yourself anymore. A better question is this: are you making progress? Because at the end of the day, your net worth isn't a measure of your worth as a person. It's just a snapshot of where you are financially right now, and snapshots change. Whether you're ahead of your age group, right in the middle, or feel like you've got a lot of catching up to do, here's something worth remembering. Almost everyone who's built serious wealth started from zero, and plenty of them actually started below zero. The difference wasn't that they had perfect timing, wealthy parents, or some secret investment strategy. More often than not, they just built good financial habits, invested consistently, stayed away from unnecessary debt, and gave their money enough time to grow. That's really what it comes down to. So if today's numbers were higher than you expected, don't let that discourage you. Use them as a benchmark. If you're ahead, that's great. Keep doing what you're doing. If you're behind, that's okay too. The important thing is that you start moving in the right direction, because a year from now, you'll either be glad you started today or you'll wish you had. And that's a decision only you can make. Now, if there's one milestone that can completely change your financial journey, it's reaching your first $100,000. Charlie Munger once said that the first $100,000 is the hardest because that's the point where compound growth really starts to work in your favor. Up until then, it can feel like you're doing all the heavy lifting yourself. In the next video, I'm going to show you exactly how ordinary people can realistically reach that first $100,000, even if they're starting from scratch. So if that's something you're working toward, click on the video that's on your screen right now, and I'll see you over there.